Uffe, thank you very much for a very inspiring keynote speech. And this leads us in a very natural way to the next theme. Audience engagement is about mutual learning through long-term engagement. That is the main theme of the next presentation. Now let me introduce Karolina Rosenqvi and Erling Bjørnvinsen from Malmo University, who will present some of the insights gained from the Music Experience Design Research Project. Do please come.
Hi, everyone. See if this mic works. Does it work? Yes, it does. Does your work, Erling?
I don't know. Does it? Yes.
Yes, it does. So we just need to switch. So it does work this time. Okay, my name is Karolina. I have the honor and the privilege of being the project manager of this project that we're going to tell you all about. And Copenhagen Phil is one of the partners in this project. So what do we do? I just have to check. Is this headset sort of earring proof? Yeah, I was actually moderating a session once and I had this really weird sound, which ended up, I didn't take them off. I was just standing frozen like this, so the whole session, but okay. So our project develop and design new experiences on the framework of classical music. And we do develop and test, mainly in productions, which is, of course, could be different concerts, processes, which could be methods of co-creation, for instance, or products or prototypes of products, which could be an app, it could be an installation in the foyer, for example. You're going to see some of the cases we've been working on later during this presentation. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, we started off in September 2 years ago, and we are actually ending this project in December, so we have 3 months left to go. And this is a EU-funded project within the Öresund region, Interreg, program number 4, and we also got some funding from the region of Skåne. And if we take the next slide, I'll introduce you to the partners. So this constellation is built upon 3 cultural institutions within the Öresund region. Symphony orchestras, so we have Copenhagen Phil, we have Royal Danish Theatre, the Kapellet, which is the symphony orchestra at the Royal Danish Theatre, and Malmo Symphony Orchestra. And then we have 2 academic institutions. It's Malmo University, where I and Erling works, and we have Royal Design School in Copenhagen. And we also have political platform organization, that's the Öresund Committee. And we do have actually a business cluster in the region too, which is called Media Evaluation. They are an associated partner to connect the project with, for instance, programmers or other business-related partners that could be of value to this project. Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. So why do we actually do this? We want to develop new experiences for the audience, and we want to reach new audiences within the Öresund region. We actually had a quite ambitious vision for this project. We want to democratize the art forms that are based on or use classical music. And the strategy we've been working with is this new constellations with these partners working together for the first time. To be able to do so, we actually spent the first 4 to 6 months discussing values, having audience discussions, and we also talked about what was significant for the 3 different cultural institutions involved. They are similar, of course, but there are also huge differences between them. We decided to work on already existing concert formats. You're all aware of that the program is planned very long in advance, and our basic idea was to actually create new formats. That was not possible. So we picked some existing formats and redesigned them and expanded them during this project period. And Wu was one of the projects that we've been working with. The title of our talk here is Weaving Audience Engagement, and we have been thinking about this metaphor. Do you know the game, The Cat's Cradle? You know, when you have a lace and you do figures with it, yeah? And you can do some of them your own. You can do I could do the coffee cup and the Eiffel Tower, but you can only do it yourself to some extent. Then you need to have another person to sort of work into more complicated figures. So what we mean is that it needs to be a constant weaving of relationships and ideas between the cultural organizations and the audiences. And actually the same goes for how to organize the work of audience engagements within the organizations. We're going to show you a film now that will give you an overview of some of the cases that we have been working with during these 2 years. And after the film, we will revisit the cases again, but then through 3 different themes or threads that we think is of huge importance for this project. First one is media or mediation. Second one is audiences and levels of engagement. And the third one is organization. But once again, they are very connected. So you will hear that during our talk, that me and Erling is weaving the threads back and forth. These 3 themes are actually reflected in the 5 outbreak sessions that will follow this case presentation. But we have expanded them with 2 more themes. The first one will be the cultural canon, and the second one will be new value models, which is also part of our Interact project to look into that. Yeah. I hope we have some sound too for the film.
Shadow play. In this family concert, the audience is invited to create shadows in the foyer before the concert.
In the project we used an analog technique with light and canvas, but we also developed a digital technique where an interface using a Kinect were controlling the movements of shadows on screen. All the shadows were video recorded, and the shadow produced were used by a VJ in a live video mix projected on a backscreen during the concert. From the Shadow Play project, we learned that if the audience before the concert can be part of producing something that will be used in the concert, they bring more attention to the concert. We further developed that in a concert called Music to Go, for example at a percussion concert where the audience in the foyer was invited to produce sounds with their body. This was both video and sound recorded and used during the concert.
Joystick. The orchestra plays music from well-known computer games. This gives a dedicated special audience who love the games and therefore relates to the music. This year, the gaming community has been invited to workshops developing what music to play and what activities should be set up in the foyer to make the experience relevant. We learned community management outside our traditional audience.
Malmo Symphony Orchestra built a whole new communication platform in cooperation with the Malmo gaming community to start interact with its audience. They hired a blogger from within the target audience community to create relevant activity, and over 6 months the orchestra invited to workshops developing repertoire and foyer activities. The orchestra has earned a dedicated audience group, and the next year Joystick concert is already widely sold, which hadn't happened before. Nalle is the name of a famous teddy bear in Sweden. The Nalle concert is the Malmo Symphony Orchestra playing for children who are asked to bring their teddy bear to the concert. This year the theme was Nalle in Space. We produced an application for iPad where the kids could compose music joining planets and solar systems. The planets on the iPad had their own composed sounds from the orchestra. When the kids put them together, they made their own harmonies, and when they continued doing it, it became their own composition. Children played with the app before the concert, at home and in the foyer. Then they could recognize the music bits in the concert, and after the concert, a large amount of the audience stayed in the foyer to play with the sounds on the iPad.
We built a prototype of something we call the World Online Orchestra.
In short, WOO. What you hear is all the members of Copenhagen Phil performing their individual part of the Beethoven 7th Symphony second movement. You can press a certain musician and you will hear that voice emphasized. Go into full screen to learn more about this musician. Now, you can build your own ensemble. This is your unique ensemble, and there are infinite possibilities. This is what the prototype can do, but we want to go further. We want you to participate. To participate, record, upload, and then you are a member of the World Online Orchestra. It's that simple.
Students. Malmo University and the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts, Schools of Architecture, Design and Conservation has some of their students working with cases around our musical experience design. Altogether, we keep on developing, testing and prototyping musical experience design.
So on the first theme that relates to media, we've been wanting in the project to see how we can weave participation between the cultural institution and the audiences, enabling various levels of co-creation. And there we have had some good insights. One of them is that media is really good to expand the experience. So you can expand it both in time and space, as you can see. People can get engaged in the concert long before and also to some degree during, but also after. With Joystick, for example, we started this blogging platform where a gamer blogged for several months before the concert, and this created enormous interest in the concert and anticipation. And we saw also in Shadow Play and in the Nalle concert the same thing happening. The children not only understood and learned a lot more about the music being played, but the anticipation was considerably increased because they were waiting for the song that they had been playing or for the animals that they had animated and so forth. In Joystick, we also saw that the gamers, when we had these workshops and they saw that it was a serious engagement, they were happy to share their knowledge about game music. They were also great ambassadors. They shared their networks and connected out to the wider world. And they were also happy to share ideas about future formats. An important insight was also in the joystick project was that communication qualities need to be changed. They and adjusted to the audience, so their way of expressing becomes central, which in the gaming community meant less formal, less pitch perfect, more bi-directional, communicative, dialogical, and so forth. Another quality that we saw was that holistic approach is necessary when it comes to media. You can't think about the media as some discrete object. You need to think about how it interacts and connects to face-to-face activities. And it also relates to, obviously, the aesthetic qualities. So, for example, you saw on the Music to Go that the visuals and the rhythm in the video needs to be tightly connected to the music. And the same with joystick. You saw that the pixel aesthetics, which we built upon, was the unifying expression across the web, in the foyer, in the concert hall, but not the least that it actually built upon craft culture and the kind of folk festival idea that is prevalent within the gaming community. But we saw also some challenges. We saw a tendency to some degree at the cultural institution to think of media as something that can almost replace social relations, as thinking of media as freestanding objects that instead of where, for example, where you build a lot of educational material, but then you don't have time to build relations with the schools that are meant for, that the educational material is meant for. And we see also a challenge, obviously, when you start kind of specializing both the communication strategy to different groups. How do you balance that with the major kind of, or the way that the cultural institution at large presents itself?
Yeah, and that leads us into the second thread, or the second theme, which is audiences. We have mostly worked with the usual suspects, which is kids, youngsters, and families. And one of the examples is, of course, the family concert at the Royal Danish Theatre with the shadow play experience or concept. And the other one was the Nalle concert at Malmo Symphony Orchestra. But we also worked with other groups. Music to Go in Copenhagen was actually a format for reaching out to the non-classical audience. And 60 Minutes, Uffe named briefly about people interested in indie music and the crossover between indie and classical music. I think that this one is running a bit on speed here, but so the production and the experiences have shown several points. We'll be pointing out two of them here today. And the first one is that engaging with audiences is a process of mutual learning and mutually beneficial for both sides. It is, of course, a two-way exchange consisting of collaboration and partnerships. The cultural institutions can understand more about the audience's motivation, the dedication, the knowledge, and their networks, just like Erling just said. And the audience can, of course, learn more in deep of the music, but they can also influence or maybe even co-create production. So an example of that is, once again, the joystick experiment, where Malmo Symphony Orchestra had actually to redefine their perception of a gamer. Working together with gamers in Malmo, they realized that gamers are not only youngsters, they're actually people in their 30s and 40s, and not all of them are men. And we had a series of workshops together with people from the gaming community, and it also became quite clear that their perception of being active or engaged was actually different. It wasn't enough to just go to a concert. They wanted to have activities before and after, and for instance in the foyer. and also memories to bring back home, and a forum for sharing their ideas and their experiences. And that insight led us to the idea of creating this blog, where we then, it was run by a blogger from the gaming community in collaboration together with the staff from Malmo Symphony Orchestra. The blogger and the gaming community, on the other hand, learned more about how an orchestra works, how classical music connects to gaming music and other related music. And they were also invited to take part in actually deciding the repertoire of the concert and what activities to be set up in the foyer. So it actually became their concert. The other insight we would like to point out is that you need to have a long-term perspective on establishing audience relationships. And we want to state that engagement with audiences shouldn't be reduced to a marketing strategy for selling tickets. It is a long-term process to establish and maintain strategic, dynamic, and sustainable relationships. It is time-consuming to understand different audiences' social and cultural values and motivations. And the cultural institutions must be relevant and see new contexts and also new constellations and partnerships to work with. And they need to open up early in the process, not just like a couple of weeks before a concert. That is actually Joystick a really good example of. Just like Erling said before, the Joystick experiment showed that the gaming community is willing to share their knowledge. They were also willing to become Joystick ambassadors, to share their experience with other gamers. And Malmo Symphony Orchestra now has the possibility of working together with, for instance, small independent game developers. They could, for instance, create masterclasses in composing game music, and also being in a very important collaboration partner, for instance, the Nordic Game Conference, which is hosted every year in Malmo, and other similar constellations with the gaming industry in the region. There are several challenges here, of course, and one of them is actually to create formats that allows development along the way with the audiences and external competences over time. Once again, you need to weave together prototyping during the way, and maybe not just trying out a new format once and then shut it down if you can't fill the concert hall. It takes time, of course, and you also need to evaluate and to be open to find new ways and new constellations. Music to Go that you saw some pieces of here was actually a series of 5 concerts. And it was changing every time. For every concert had a different concept, which leads us into the second challenge, because opening up a process creates expectations. In case of the Nali experience, we could see that audience expected actually more melodies to be released on the app. That is, of course, a challenge, but also a huge opportunity for Malmo Symphony Orchestra. And in the case of Music to Go, we could see that it was this growing curiosity from the audience, because they knew that every concert had its new expression. And actually the audience expected something new to happen from time to time. The last example is a fantastic one, I think. That's actually Joystick again, because already 300 tickets are sold. The concert is in January, and there hasn't been any information about the program released yet. But 300 people have actually bought its tickets, which is a really good sign.
And that leads into the last theme, which has to do with the organization. And we knew from the start that obviously both institutional possibilities and constraints, but also the the project possibilities and constraints were considerable, and we had to work with that and not think that it would be easy. On the positive side, I think looking back, one of the positive things has been that we've all been willing to work in an open-ended process. We had no idea where we would end up when we started. We had not decided that this, what you saw in the movie, would happen. That happened through constant negotiations, and where we listened to each other's values, needs, and know-how, and constraints and possibilities. And for example, when it came to the joystick, the researchers were first reluctant and said, no, we don't want to go into this collaboration because it's already a success. What are we supposed to do? But we listened to Malmo Symphony Orchestra that said, well, we believe that there are huge possibilities to do more, and also because we need to take this format and work with it because we have some organizational issues to deal with. So all this happened through constant ping-pong or weaving action. And the same goes with actually the Nalle and the symphonic sequencer. Malmo Symphony Orchestra had a different idea from the beginning. And then we challenged them and said, well, what if we went that way? And then they said, yes, of course, let's try that. And they got a composer, they got a programmer, or we got a programmer, and they MSO booked time for the orchestra to record, and so forth. And then it went rolling. And this means that it's important to be attentive to this kind of negotiations and not be kind of too stuck in what you think the future should be, that is done through negotiations. And this was, for this to happen, building an infrastructure of trust where we were willing to share and get to know each other's know-how, exposing strengths and weaknesses was central, and this takes time. The challenges, on the other hand, was that it was difficult to have a consistency in the groups and also organizational anchoring. In Joystick, for example, there was not one person from the cultural institution that was participating throughout the 1.5 years. There were different people coming in and out, and we had hoped also that it would be a constant kind of cutting across the whole organization that would be participating all the time. Also the anchoring, sometimes in these big cultural institutions, for example at the Royal Danish Theatre, sometimes the person working in the project had hard time anchoring it within the organization, and then having to cut and kind of do shortcuts and go straight to the audience developers, which then later could to some degree backfire as one had gone, not talked or involved the middle managers and so forth. It's also been a challenge to challenge actually and core values and what audience to work with. As Karolina said, we work with the usual suspect. And this has to do some degree to do with what Uffe said, that a lot of these cultural institutions are pressured by forces outside to sell tickets and measurements and being effective. And that means that you fall back on what is safe. And being effective is not the same thing as having effect. And that is a big difference, we think, and that needs to be recognized. For example, reaching out to the surrounding society and the diversity in that surrounding society is an important effect that can't be measured, for example, in the same way. How are we doing with time? Okay. So zooming out a bit, looking at this from a democratic perspective, we said there is a democratic ambition here. we think often of democracy as this going voting once every 4 years or something like that. But another aspect of democracy is to acknowledge the voices and actions from those in power that have not recognized or given a voice to. And Dewey, for example, talked about publics coming about when various partners disagree, which is often instigated by those whose values, needs, desires have not been heard. So as we've shown, the negotiation between different partners have been constructive have happened. A lot of negotiations between different perspectives have been acknowledged. But we've also shown how broad organizational anchoring has often been difficult, where some perspectives are not given space to engage in forming future practices. We've also shown how bottom-up initiatives have been shut down. We've also addressed how difficult it has been to engage new audience groups that would reflect that we are living in a multicultural times and that acknowledges democratic diversity. And this is not to say that these institutions don't address this. They do in many ways. However, if we believe democratic values are important both within and without the cultural institutions, it is necessary to recognize that friction, constructive differences are assets and not problems. We also need to be aware of the difference between efficiency and, for example, number of tickets sold and effect. Efficiency is quantitative while effect is quality. Of course, we want all a full house, but at times diversity as an effect is more important than reaching the majority, the usual suspect.
Yeah.
So this leads us to some ending questions.
Yeah. To wrap up our case presentation, we think that the lessons that we've learned, we suggest that the following questions are important to bring home. The first one is, to what degree does your institution represent and reflect the surrounding society? And the second one is, to what degree are various perspectives within the organization given a voice? And the third one is, who are given the opportunity to initiate and carry through new initiatives? And how are negotiations carried through?
And when those things are in place, then the media stuff can enter, we think.
Yeah. So we do have a project web where you can actually download a lot of presentations, some images, both moving images and pictures of the tests and experiments that we have been working with these 2 years. And we're actually working on a project catalog that will be released in December, both in a printed version and in a digital version. So if you're interested in that or just have questions, please contact us. Thank you.